자, The Flying Ray. 스카이레이.
The Skyray is an American
자, 이거 이벤트 장비 처음 나왔을 때 뽑아서 좋아했는데 날개가 그냥 꿋꿋했어. 진짜 구대기였어요. 바뀌지 않았을 거라 생각합니다. 이거 처음 나왔을 때 최초의 초음속기 뭐 이런 이야기 있었는데.
For instance, it's the first ever supersonic carrier-based aircraft, the last aircraft made by
나오네,
Douglas
제초
before it merged with McDonnell,
초음속기.
a testing stand for anti-satellite weapons, and overall a pretty reliable combat vehicle. The Skyray began its path in the late 1940s in the Douglas Company, where
40년대
engineers were experimenting
후반에
with a delta wing for future combat aircraft. Back then,
설계했던
engine
건가?
power advanced in leaps and bounds, but the military also updated its requirements for fighters very often.
이 시대의
According to
무기는
calculations, a
자주
delta wing was
이제
supposed
사양이
to provide a major
업데이트됐다.
advantage at supersonic speeds. Some prototypes were even designed to the shape of a flying wing, like the German Horten 229.
호르텐트
But only the
같았다.
most balanced variants actually made it to production. The research Douglas was conducting accidentally coincided with the new needs of the Department of Defense. The officials were looking for a new aircraft capable of delivering quick
미국의
strikes to enemy
항공
heavy
저 뭐냐
bombers. The
방위는
United States
민간이
received access to many
만들고
German
정부에서 채택하는
technologies
거라.
after World War II. And
장점도
Alexander
있고 단점도
Lippisch,
있는데
the designer
지금은 너무
of the famous
썩어버렸죠 애들이.
Comet, shared his findings and even had personal consultations
게임도
with American
마찬가지인데
engineers.
예,
And so the
실제
XF-4D
엔지니어들이
interceptor
아니라
project was born,
뭐
later named
있잖아요.
the Skyray.
금융
Due to the resemblance
관리자들이
of its shape.
와가지고
The
회사
prototype
망치다.
was ready in the early
물건을
1950s.
만들어내야지 그거를
The
이제
engineers and
잘
military
포장하고 팔아야 될 거
officials
아니에요.
even reached agreement on all the
실제
stumbling
물건에 대해서는
blocks,
신경
but
안
mass
쓰고
production was still not going to
그
happen
사이에
for a
오가는
while.
돈에 대해서
The
신경
most
쓰면
powerful
어떻게
engine at the
되겠어요?
moment was the J-40 made by
주화부가 반대로 된
Westinghouse,
거지.
but the future aircraft required still more thrust. The development of a new
베타를
power
뒷보다
plant took longer than
생긴 거
expected.
나쁘지 않거든. 저
So the
델타이기
prototype
또 승계자잖아.
F-4Ds received the J-57
오죽하면
engines
제가
from
안
Pratt &
타겠습니까
Whitney.
이거. 예.
In turn, this decision
팔아버렸어.
forced the engineers to
갖고 있다가
redesign the
팔아버렸어.
tail section of the aircraft, pushing its mass
아,
production
미사일은
even
사와비입니다.
further.
사와비네 봐.
That's why the Skyray ended up ready for introduction
내가 비알이
only in
그때
1956,
9.3이었나?
when its flight performance wasn't that impressive anymore. By that time, the world had already seen the F-100 Super Sabre, the Soviet MiG-19, and some other aircraft with capabilities similar to the Skyray. That's why the F-4D didn't last even 10 years in service. Despite all the unfortunate delays and misfortunes, it left a bright mark in the history of aviation. For example, it set a new
밝은
world
흔적을
record in speed,
남겼습니다. 세계 기록, 최고 속도
1,211 kilometers an hour. On top of that, it was the
초음속.
first carrier-based aircraft with such an achievement. The fighter was reliable, but pretty hard to control.
살짝
Young
날개나
pilots used
신체적인
it to train
형상이
maneuver,
은행
later switching to more advanced and less demanding aircraft, like the Crusader fighter. Still, Douglas wasn't planning to abandon the project. The engineers were ready to present prototypes of a new, even faster fighter called the Skylancer. But fate decided to throw a sucker punch. The military opted for an aircraft made by their direct competitor, the Vought Company. Douglas was suffering major losses and had to merge with McDonnell.
야,
And
설마
despite this
이걸로
unpleasant
망한 거야?
experience, it wasn't a fatal blow. They would go on
합병당해버렸네.
to produce numerous famous combat aircraft in the years to come.